Justice, therefore, is part of every person's life because they know why having control of the Supreme Court matters. And to me, that's the Elon perspective, the American perspective, what is right and what is wrong, what's okay and what is not. So, for example, all of the January 6th prisoners, that's not okay because...
Well, we are back on Katie Hopkins' official channel on YouTube. This is just her talking to camera about she's commenting on against the backdrop of what's currently going on between Elon Musk and Nigel Farage in connection with Tommy Robinson. I won't get into the details right now. If you've watched some of my other videos, you will know about this. I will mention it during the course of the video, but basically Elon Musk has fallen out with Nigel Farage, who is the head of the UK of the Reform UK party in the UK. And Elon Musk has amplified Tommy Robinson, who is an anti-mass migration, especially mass migration by Muslims. He's an activist in the UK who is currently in jail, but who has been an activist against specifically Muslim rape gangs in the UK. Like, who couldn't be against that? But he's been doing that for at least 20 years, more than 20 years, I believe. So... this has brought up all sorts of issues, brought a lot of things to light. The establishment in the UK are melting down because Elon Musk is commenting on the problems that they've been hiding and covering up and suppressing for the last 20-odd years. And people in the US are getting concerned because Elon Musk has been on a bit of a rampage since Christmas, saying some pretty odd things on Twitter, but with regard to the UK, he's said some pretty spot-on things. So you never know what you're going to get with Elon Musk. He's a bit like Trump in that regard. You just never know what you're going to get. But if he says something right, I will acknowledge it for sure. And if he says something wrong, I will criticize it. I already have. So let's get into what Katie Hopkins is talking about here.
I think that the big fallout between Farage, Elon Musk and, by default, Tommy, isn't anything to do with those individuals specifically. I think the idea of a fallout has nothing to do with those big names. I think this whole fight is actually about something very different, something much bigger than anyone else, and it's about justice. And I just want to explain it from different perspectives, if I may. Having spent over 5 years on the road across America, when I was effectively ejected from my own country, couldn't live here safely, couldn't be near my family safely, whatever, I spent a lot of time being amongst Americans, and their sense of justice is keen. Their faith in justice is kind of imbued in them through their constitution. Their idea that the Constitution means you have a right to freedom, a right to your own life, a right to the pursuit of happiness. That's inside of them. And from a young age, Americans understand why the Supreme Court matters. And it's a conversation we never have here in the UK. Which judges are being appointed to the Supreme Court? It's not a conversation. We don't have that. But it's very much front and centre of all American elections, who gets control of the Supreme Court. And what I'm trying to say by that is justice, therefore, is part of every person's life because they know why having control of the Supreme Court matters. And to me, that's the Elon perspective, the American perspective, what is right and what is wrong, what's okay and what is not. So, for example, all of the January 6th prisoners, that's not okay because they were thrown in prison much in the same way that Keir Starmer did after the Southport riots. Throw everyone in prison, take political prisoners, and that's not just, not in any side of the pond. But in America, justice still really stands for something. And I think that forms Elon's perspective. He can look at Tommy Robinson's case and he can see that that's not justice. You can't have a man in solitary confinement for contempt of court, and anyone who thinks otherwise is mad. And you can totally see that perspective. It is, of course, insanity that a man is in jail in solitary for contempt of court. A charge that no one has ever been jailed for historically, apart from Tommy himself.
Yeah, very interesting, isn't it? This is not the first time that Tommy Robinson has been jailed for contempt of court. I remember the last time because I've been following him for quite a few years now. Since just I've been following him for so long, but I remember when I first mentioned him to another Brit, they were absolutely shocked that I would even know about him or have even the slightest positive thing to say about him. But that's how brainwashed the Brits have been. The general populace the general British population have been by their mainstream media and the establishment, the government, for decades now. Because just the mention of Tommy Robinson would automatically cue a response. Oh, he's a racist bigot. He was in jail, wasn't he? English Defence League, football hooligan. But if they didn't actually mention the fact that he was an activist against Muslim rape gangs, child sexual exploitation gangs that were operating effectively unhindered. They were operating with the knowledge of the police and the politicians, but unhindered by them, despite parents of girls calling out these problems, despite people like Tommy Robinson, activists, calling out the problem. It's absolutely sickening. The whole story is absolutely sickening and enraging. And Katie Hopkins makes a good point. Why should he even be jailed for contempt of court? Okay, fine him or jail him for a week or whatever. I'm sure even in the US, I don't think they put people in jail in solitary confinement for contempt of court. Although, to be fair, in his case, they might put him in solitary because his life has been threatened many times in jail. He's been in jail before. And because, oh wow, what a surprise, English jails have a huge population of Muslims in them. Pakistani Muslims in particular. Isn't that shocking? Wow, maybe we should look at the statistics in other European countries that have large, minorities, large populations of Muslim immigrants, and see what their jails look like. Well, in some countries, probably most European countries these days, you're not even allowed to keep those kinds of statistics. Like in France, for example, you're simply not allowed to do that. It's against the law to break statistics down by ethnicity or ethnicity or race or whatever. It's just not even allowed for some reason. But enterprising people have done it just based on, last names. And it's pretty shocking. Yeah, but you can find out if you do the slightest amount of research. You'll find that certain groups in European countries or in the Anglosphere countries, including the United States, certain groups are responsible for vastly disproportionate amounts of violent crime.
And then you have Farage's perspective. Farage has created reform. He's been consistent that he doesn't want to have anything to do with Tommy Robinson. That was true in UKIP. It's why UKIP fell apart. It's been true in reform. He's always been very clear. He doesn't want anything to do with Tommy Robinson. But park that. He has built a political party. Doesn't matter, you're going to correct me and say it's a limited company or it's a company, blah, blah, blah. Fine. Reform. Reform have the biggest membership, beating the Conservative. Fact. Reform have the best chance of winning the next election if many things line up together, enough Conservative MPs defect to Reform, etc. And his aim, in my words, is to take control of number 10, to win the next election, whenever it is, hopefully sooner rather than later, in order to put the great back into Britain. And here's the brilliant thing about this, is that actually everybody wants the same thing. Elon Musk wants justice. Justice for the little girls, justice for those who are victims of these grooming gangs. Justice also for a guy imprisoned for no reason, kept in solitary for no reason, who did nothing but try and speak freely, which of course is Elon's big platform. Farage wants to get political power in order to have change in the UK. We cannot get the change we need without taking political power. It's the current system, and it's the only system we've got, and reform are the best hope. And I know, because I can feel it in every bit of my makeup. I can feel the disappointment and sadness of ordinary people who were hopeful that reform could make it. And I don't want people to be disappointed or jaded or feel like that hope is lost, because it's absolutely still there. All that needs to happen is a little reset. And Tommy himself, not that I speak for him, always wants justice for the causes he cares about. And that's the really great thing, is that Tommy and Tommy's crowds and the people that turn up to rallies, they also want justice. Ordinary people like me, ordinary people want justice, want things to be all right, want things to be fair. I personally want British people to be at the front of the line. I want people who've paid into the system to do best out of it. I want to have our elderly able to get the healthcare they need. I want our veterans to be looked after. I want people who've worked hard to be rewarded for it, and people who are choosing not to work hard not to be rewarded. I don't want not contributing to this country to be a choice as it currently is. So those are the things I want. I want justice for hard-working British people, always have done. And the great thing here is all of that can work together. Elon can be the provider of a platform where speech can be free, and Tommy and his videos can be seen as they have been. Without X, none of that video got seen to the extent it's been seen, right? And he wants justice. Elon wants justice in that American setting, which makes perfect sense as an American, and it's why all of Britain seems completely mad. Farage is building something that can make change happen. He is building something that can put right many of the injustices that ordinary people like me feel. So in a way, Tommy and all of the people that turn up at rallies and me and other people, we can have what we want through reform. We don't have to belong to it.
Well, obviously I'm very big on white pills. I think it is very important not to lose hope. Absolutely important. It's important. In fact, it's a sin to black pill, I would say. It's absolutely essential to have hope, to work in a hopeful fashion towards improvement. I think Katie Hopkins is doing the right thing here. She's pointing out what's important, and she's saying, well, yeah, the system is rotten. The system has let a lot of people down. It's caused a lot of damage, and that Nigel Farage is our best hope politically at this stage. I don't know about that. If you know more about that, if you have an opinion on Farage and Reform UK, please let me know in the comments. I would like to learn more about that and hear from you. I read all the comments, by the way, so I will see it. And, I agree. We should support people who are fighting back against this. Farage, I do have hopes, because he has a long history. He used to be a member of the European Parliament, and you can see a hilarious speech on YouTube of him. I think it was his last day in the European Parliament, where he was just absolutely berating the European Parliament and the European Union in general, and saying that he would be happy. He will consider his job done when the European Union is no longer exists. It's absolutely fantastic watching everybody else in the room, as he lambastes their whole raison d'etre. It's absolutely fantastic. And I agree. I think the European Union is pretty much like the United States federal government. It's just it's like any huge organization, huge bureaucracy. It's grown way beyond its original purview. And yes, it does things which are useful, but it does too much damage, and it's destructive. But this is for another video. Getting back to Katie Hopkins and Nigel Farage and Elon Musk and Tommy Robinson, it is all about the fight, and we must not give up hope. It is very important not to give up hope. We must continue fighting, and we must continue putting this information in front of as many people as possible. And people like Katie Hopkins and Tommy Robinson are fighting. They are literal activists and have been for many, many years. And it is great that Elon Musk is amplifying their message, and that Farage is fighting the political fight in the way that he knows how. So these are all very good things. But we have to do our part too, and we have to spread the word and not be afraid to say what needs to be said, despite regardless if people call you names, they say you're bigoted or racist or whatever. Who cares at this point? Who even cares? I want a better Europe, the country I live in, my home country of America, and my adopted country of Belgium, and my semi-adopted country of the UK, because my first wife was English. My first ex-wife is English, so I was very fond of England. I've been many, many times, and my ex-in-laws are English and all that. So I have a fondness for the English and the country, but currently I have zero desire to visit because of all that's been going on there in the last 10, 15 years. Anyway, we must not give up hope. We must continue the fight, continue getting the information out. And, despite Elon's flaws, he is amplifying these important stories. So we must be grateful to him for that too. Absolutely. Anyway, let me know what you think about all this. These are ongoing issues. They're serious issues. And, I hope you appreciate this kind of content. It's important. I think it's very important for those of us who want Western civilization to not only survive, but to thrive in the countries where it sprang up, in Europe itself, in the European countries themselves, and in the countries founded and created by Europeans, basically the Anglosphere countries. I want those countries to do well, and they're only going to do well if they take the necessary action. That's important. And to take that necessary action, we must get enough people aware of the incredible damage that has been done for decades now, but is currently being done. We must make people aware of this, and we must stop the rot. And once we do that, that will be a big help, But then we can start rebuilding. That will be the easy part. Stopping the rot, rooting out the problem. The people who have insisted on making this happen, our so-called leaders, our so-called elites and leaders who have actively encouraged this destruction. We need to get them out and make sure that they can never come to power again. Whether that means trying them, putting them in jail. I think politicians should be held responsible, frankly, for damage that they cause. If politicians were held responsible for the damage they caused, there would be a lot less radical politics going on. There'd be a lot less people experimenting, doing social experiments on entire countries. Because if they knew that they would be held accountable, and I mean like held accountable like they, in a nice country, spend the rest of their life in jail if they ruined a part of society. That would be a nice punishment. Then they might think twice. They really might think twice about trying to make these sweeping changes, trying to make everything a utopia. I think they would. But that will be a subject for another video. Let me know what you think. Please like and subscribe. Really helps me grow the channel and continue making content for you.